Get a deeper connection with the Cougars of BYU sports.
God gives us a gift, and we use that gift until he takes it away.
Deep Blue.
Just sitting down afterward and being really tired and thinking like, wow, I just won the U.S. Championship.
This is Deep Blue. Here's your host, Jason Shepard.
Thanks for tuning in for a new episode of Deep Blue. This is the show where we get to know the person behind the number that you see on the field or the court. These are the true stories of BYU athletes from their own mouths. And my guest today, former BYU tight end and current BYU associate AD over development, he is the great Chad Lewis. And I underline great.
You don't need to.
I underline it, I bold it, I italicize it. The great Chad Lewis. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate this.
My brothers would be like, oh, bro, stop.
Well, this is not the first time that you have been on the Deep Blue podcast. You were a guest on season 1 when Jerem Jordan was the host.
Yep.
And at that time, they really got into more of a broad discussion about you and your life. And there are certain aspects that we will certainly touch on, but we invited you back today instead to talk about and celebrate the 1996 BYU football season, a team of which you were certainly an integral part of. And I know when you walked in, you're like, are we going to talk some football today? And I said, yeah, we're going to talk about the 96 team. And he's like, oh, I got some stories. So that is what we're going to talk about today. As an associate athletic director, how much were you involved in the decision to sort of celebrate the 96 team this upcoming season? Did you have anything to do with that besides being an alum of that year?
It's mainly David Almadova and his crew, but he was talking early on what they wanted to do, celebrate that team, bring back the jerseys, the drop shadow uniform, which we thought was cool at the time. I still think it's cool. Looks good. I just don't like white on white. We went up to Washington, got beat white on white, and I was like, I don't want to do that ever again.
Nearly 30 years later, what does that, first of all, is that crazy to think of, but also, what does that 96 season represent to you?
Time flies on the wings of lightning. That's what 96, thinking about it almost 30 years later, means to me. And what that team represents to me, the year, the team, the group of people, the success we had, it represents one of the best teams in BYU football history, which has had so many great teams, so many great players. But it was one of the teams that was right at the top. It was competitive. It was stacked at every position. We had great competition in practice. We brought that competition to the field. A lot of the games we wanted to start a track meet and light the scoreboard with points. We had a lot of wins. We were 14-1. It was the most in NCAA history for wins just because of we played Hawaii. We got an extra game. We played the WAC Championship game. We had the Pigskin Classic. So it was a unique year. It was one of Lavelle's last years. We can talk about some things that made it a special year, but there's so much that goes into that year, that group of people, that group of coaches, special time.
I know I'm probably setting myself up for disappointment, but is there any chance that everybody involved in the 96 team still contributes to a text thread that you guys have? I just want to assume that you guys are all on the same text thread talking every day and reminiscing about just how unbelievable of a year that was. But in all seriousness, what's the relationship like that you still have with some of those guys today?
Every time we see each other, we're teammates. It doesn't matter if it's a BYU function or if it's out at a restaurant or if it's at a away game or if it's at a home game. When we see each other, we're tight, and we still have inside jokes. We laugh about stuff. We care about each other. It was definitely a special time. We do need to create a text thread with that team and just keep things popping because it's fun to see people's personalities through the years, and yeah, we got to get that going. Thank you.
All right. Hey, I'm glad if I've done anything. Hopefully, I've started the process.
You've done some good in the world today.
I like it. Does that mean that I get an invite to the text thread?
Come on, let's go.
Really? I kind of thought that was going to be a quick no. All right. Oh, let's get into it then. So before we get to the 96, let's go to the year before because that kind of sets everything up.
It sets it up. You're right.
So the 95 team went 7-4, and it's a decent record. It's a good record. But with how many bowl games there are today, it really does seem surprising that BYU missed out on a bowl game with a 7-4 record.
We chose to miss out on a bowl game.
Okay, so tell
Not
us.
us. I mean, players, we were pissed. We wanted to go to bowl games.
So tell us about the story.
We were bowl eligible 6 games. We won 7 games, and the last game was a victory over Fresno State, where Steve Sarkisian, this is his first year at BYU, came from El Camino Junior College, and he would have liked to win starting with the first game against Air Force. We didn't. UCLA, we didn't. We had to have a comeback victory over San Diego State, But Steve was so comfortable at BYU from his first practice in spring ball to his last game at Kansas State in the Cotton Bowl. But he was definitely getting his feet under him and getting the leadership of the team. By the end of that 95 year, he was clicking on all cylinders. He broke an NCAA record for completions. He was like the momentum on that team and the fire and you could just feel stuff like getting ready to pop. And when we chose as the BYU administration not to go to a bowl game, that went deep to every one of us. Deep. Like we were hot. We wanted to fight, and we kept that fight through spring ball. We kept that fight through the summer, and we unloaded in the 96 year. And all that was in preparation of the great year that we had. We knew the string of bowl games BYU had been to. We earned the right to go to a bowl game. And when we chose not to go I wasn't in the room, I didn't make the decisions. When we didn't go, there was a powder keg in every one of us, and it was lit. And we were.
What was the reason you were given for why
Doesn't
he
matter.
was chosen?
Like, look, all these years later, I don't know what it was. Doesn't matter. But we took it personal.
Sure.
And we wanted to prove to everyone, ourselves, our coaches, our families, administration, the nation, that we were BYU football. We wanted to compete.
You'd mentioned how Sark. We know what Sark will end up doing in '96, and what an unbelievable season. But what he did in that final game, and you talked about it. 34 times he threw the ball, 31 of them caught. I mean, it was certainly a sign of things to come, as you alluded to. I have maintained during my entire career covering BYU, and to me, as much as Steve Sarkisian gets talked about, I still do not think he gets the credit he deserves for being as good of a quarterback as he was. To me, he's the most underrated BYU quarterback, and we shower a lot of love on him.
Yeah.
I still don't know if it's enough.
Yeah, he was so accurate. He was so competitive. He was a great leader on and off the field. He came here from Southern California as a Catholic boy, fit in to this BYU place perfectly. He loved it. He loved stepping into the tradition of amazing BYU quarterbacks. He respected that tradition. He valued it. His family loved it. His dad, Seb, full Armenian. His mom, Irish Catholic. This family, they loved being a part of BYU, and they jumped right into the BYU family immediately. They were part of us. And so I agree with you. He's underrated. His accomplishments as a quarterback, as a captain, as a leader, he came in, took the reins, and did a fabulous job. Like, I love Steve. Loved him on the field. Fiery dude. He wanted to win. He was a blast to play with, train with, practice with. And no surprise at all to any of us that he's had great success in the coaching ranks, and he's the head coach at Texas and competed for a national championship last year.
There you go. And now in the SEC, and he continues to show why he has been as successful as he has.
And he's been in the SEC with Alabama, so he's fine.
He knows.
He's not a stranger to the competition, and he's not afraid of it. He'll be great.
So you had mentioned that the way 95 ended, you guys came out in 96 and were ready to prove people wrong. So what did you guys, going into that year, I know you guys were determined. How good did you know you were at the time?
This is an illustration of our thought process. We called a meeting with Lavelle in the summer, and it was a group of us. It was Steve Sarkisian. It was Shea Muirbrook. I want to remember, like, everyone who was in that room. It wasn't more than probably 8 of us. And we went over, we met with Lavelle in his office, and we said, we want to be national champions this year. We feel like we can do it. And And even some of the guys in the room said, Coach, we'll give up whatever it takes to be national champs. Meaning, if there was something amiss in their life, they're like, they openly said to Lavelle that day, I'm giving it up. Like, I'm all in, whatever it takes. And it was such a cool meeting. And Lavelle was great to us. And Sark said, and we have a couple requests, if that's okay. We would like an awning or a covering over the ramp. We want to come out of the ramp as like a tunnel. We want to come out together. And he's like, yeah, we'll get that done. And we were like, all right, that's cool. And then Steve's like, and Coach, we want some smoke. We want to have some smoke coming out of that. And he laughed. He was like, yeah, we'll get that done too. And it was like this older guy who we revered as our coach and friend and mentor and leader was you could just tell, you could feel, you could sense, you could hear it, that he loved being with us.
Yeah.
That was his gift. Not only did he love being with us and coaching us, but he was willing to go talk to whoever he needed to talk to make a few of those requests happen. And he did, like he did them all. And so when you ask how we felt about our potential, we felt like we could be national champs.
Wow, what a great story. And so you're telling me that everything that Cougar fans that show up at LaVell Edwards Stadium see when the players come out on the field with the tarp over the tunnel and the smoke, it all
96.
started with you guys. That doesn't happen without you guys.
No, I mean, it would have eventually happened, but that was Steve saying, hey, let's go. We want to light this place up. Let's make it fun too.
That's awesome. I had never heard that story. That is great. So you guys come in with that mindset, and right out of the gate, you guys face number 13, Texas A&M. I've got to imagine, based off of what you just said, you guys were salivating at the opportunity to take on a ranked team like that.
It went way deeper than that. It was Ty Detmer in the Holiday Bowl getting both of his shoulders separated. This game was big to us. It was personal. It meant everything. We'd seen the highlights and the lowlights of that bowl game. And then we get in there. You know, it's an early morning game, so we practice. We changed training camp that year. We were practicing very early. And the year before, we started with a 10 a.m. kickoff time at Air Force, and we lost. And we learned a lot of stuff from that really difficult loss. And we did not want that to happen again. We knew Texas A&M was a great team. They were stacked and loaded. They were coming into our place. It was an early game. It was a national television game, Pigskin Classic. And, that game meant a lot to us. We gather the night before the game. Dwayne Busby, who was working with Lavelle, he put together a highlight tape for us. And on that highlight tape, two things happened. One was, our goal was to get to Las Vegas to the WAC Championship game at the end of the year. So he had a running theme through the whole year. Elvis Presley, Viva Las Vegas. That was part of the highlight tape. It was tight. But the most important part of that highlight tape was an interview with Ty Detmer at the Philadelphia Eagles football training camp saying, hey, you guys play Texas A&M tomorrow. You can respect them, but don't give them any more credit than they deserve. They're not going to give you any credit. I got no love for those guys, so go after them. And the feeling watching Ty say that was it was so awesome. And I tell you, that room the night before was on fire. We couldn't wait to get in that stadium and kick the ball off and play some football.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So you scored the first touchdown of the game.
Correct.
The PAT was blocked, and then Texas A&M goes on a run. You guys are able to tie the game up at halftime. In terms of the game, now obviously you guys go on to win 41-37. What do you remember about the game itself?
The game was intense. It was tight. There was big plays. There was amazing grabs. Ben Kuhn had his grab. Kaipa McGuire had great plays. He was running all over that field. They were playing man coverage most of the game, which meant if someone popped free, they could go for a long ways, and that's what happened. We had some amazing special teams plays. So Derek Stevenson was our demon on special teams. He made a great hit. There was a fumble. We got the ball back. There was some turnover swings, some momentum swings, and then it comes down to the end of the game where Steve Sarkisian sees they're in man coverage. We have a play on called 65. I'm going to run a 10-yard and out if it's man, and out on the outside of me, K.O. Kealalu was going to run a streak. Steve knew exactly where he was going before the play. He saw man coverage. He's like, I'm going to KO. I think he looked off the safety, threw a perfect pass to KO for a game-winning touchdown that was just so sweet. It didn't win the game because we still had to play some defense. I think Darren Yancey recovered a fumble the next series, which sealed it. But that was so sweet that we could come back and win that game. And it was...
And it set the tone, didn't it?
It set the tone.
You guys had come into the season wanting to set a tone, and it felt like that game set the tone that you guys had envisioned for yourselves.
In 3 phases, offense, defense, and special teams. And through the year, all 3 phases rose up and played great football.
It's funny that there are certain memories and highlights for sports fans that they'll always remember. And in my mind's eye, I see the play that you're talking about to KO. Like I see it like I'm watching it on TV right now. And that's one of the great highlights.
Yeah,
and
he slid down on his back and was just like, no way. And all of us just went nuts. The stadium, it was before students had enrolled in class, so it wasn't a sellout. Like, there were still empty seats, but that place, it just went bananas when we caught that ball. And as soon as we won the game, people stormed the field. It was just one of those sweet victories in that stadium. Whew.
So now you guys got the little pregame message from Ty. Did you hear from Ty after?
Good question. Can't remember. I was teammates with Ty the very next year at Philadelphia. He was my quarterback.
Yep.
And William Thomas, was one of the defensive players on Texas A&M who separated Ty's shoulders. He was one of our linebackers on that team. And so we all talked about it. You know, Willie T thought he had the edge, and I was like, hey, we beat y'all. Ed Jasper was on that team. He was a rookie with me, so, we talked about all that kind of stuff.
That's fun. So you get the first win, then you follow that up, you beat Arkansas State. Then you travel to Seattle.
Well, Arkansas State was important because as an offense, we started the track meet. We had Kaipo McGuire once again. I think he had 2 touchdowns that game, but he was, again, running all over that field. And as an offense, it felt like we just lit a piece of dynamite.
So you go to Seattle, you're facing the Huskies, and that's a team that had just lost a heartbreaker to a ranked Arizona State team the week before. How were you guys feeling heading into your 2-0? You're heading up to Seattle. Take me through the thought process. Do you think you overlooked them a little bit?
No, Brock Hewitt was their quarterback. We knew they were very good. Rashawn Sheehy was their running back. They had very good players, offense, defense. We knew it was an extremely loud stadium, tough place to play. The way they've set the stadium, it's on top of you. They were a very good, well-coached team. We knew we were going into a dogfight. We knew we were going to win. We knew it was going to be a battle. And some things happened in that game that were uncharacteristic of our team. There were a couple drops, the couple missed field goals. There were just things that were in the gears of our momentum that just weren't clicking correctly. There was a big thing before the game where, our team was worried about the socks that we were wearing. Some of the guys wanted the long blue socks all the way up. Some wanted what we were wearing before, just the small Nike white socks that were low. And Lavelle lost his mind pregame because here we were talking about socks and what uniform combo we had. And he was hot as a pistol. He was like, what in the world is going on? You guys are worried about socks? We came up here to play a game, let's go. And to not win that game, even though they were a great team, all of us look back all these years later, and it still hurts.
Yeah.
They deserved to win because they beat us, but that game meant so much to us.
Well, and look, as anyone who follows sports knows, sometimes a loss can turn into a good thing. And yes, it stings because you wouldn't lose another game the rest of the year. But do you look at it that way, that maybe it was a game that helped you guys reset yourselves for what then the rest of the season would become?
We all talked about it both before and after that game. It galvanized us. That we knew we were a good team. We knew that we could compete with anyone. And we knew we let that one go. And there was enough leadership on that team. There were enough intensity on that team, both in practice, in preparation, and in the rest of the games that season, that we used that game as definitely motivation. It was not going to happen again. It did not happen again, which was cool, but we felt like we can't let that happen again.
All right, we're going to continue to reminisce about the 1996 season. We'll take a quick break. We'll have more with Chad Lewis when we return to the Deep Blue Podcast on BYU Radio. Thanks again to everyone out there for listening to the Deep Blue Podcast. Make sure you leave us a rating and a review on the show. You should always check out other BYU Radio podcasts as well, like Big Stories. Cleon Wall dives into incredible and amazing tales from around the Big 12 and beyond, like Kansas offensive coordinator and former BYU coach Jeff Grimes. He and his wife Sherry decided early in their marriage that they wanted to adopt a child from another country. They detail their long journey to adopting Jada from Africa and how that girl changed their family dynamic. And then there is Wyoming women's rodeo coach J.C. Hupp, who lost her parents and niece in a terrible accident but continues to lead the Cowgirls in the rodeo arena. There are so many more inspiring stories just like these two tales, so check out Big Stories on your favorite podcast platform and start listening today. Welcome back to the Deep Blue Podcast here on BYU Radio. I'm your host, Jason Shepard. Very happy to have my guest today, Chad Lewis, as we talk about the 1996 season, talk about the team, and there's still a lot to get to that we haven't touched on. So in 95, Utah came to Provo, beat BYU 34-17. In 96,
for one reason, Chris Fool, Matu Ma'afala.
He was a problem.
Ask people. He went to the pros, and he was doing
right.
the same thing for a while. He was a big, huge 270-pound running back that was light on his feet. He did a great job. He's hard to stop, and he got us.
I don't want to skip over all of the games leading into the Utah games, but I do want to focus specifically on the Utah game. After the Washington loss, you guys go on a run, and you guys you flip the script this time on Utah at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You win 37-17, and certainly nobody who's familiar with the BYU-Utah rivalry needs to be told about its importance. But what did that game mean to you because of what had happened in 95?
Well, what had happened for the last couple years? Freshman year, they beat us with a 54-yard field goal. Then we had a couple of losses up there. We finished the next year 10th in the country, but they beat us. I think Lee Beck got a great kickoff return at the end of the game to set him up to win, and then Ma'afala. So going up there in 96 was important that we get a win. And we were clicking on it, all cylinders. We did have what we felt like were weapons at every spot, specifically the running back spot. We had Brian McKenzie, Ronnie Jenkins, Mark Ottawaya, and Dustin Johnson in our backfield. We were tough and explosive, and that was what happened with the game. Is our running game became such a consistent part of that game. They had a very difficult time stopping the power of Brian McKenzie and the speed and slashing of Ronnie Jenkins. It was too much, and we got him, and we just kept pounding the ball. And I think it was a surprise to them that was our plan of attack. And as an offensive coordinator, Coach Chow, you're going in with, hey, we're going to do whatever works. Well, what worked was running the ball. So he didn't need to throw the ball 40 times if –
Stark 12 pass attempts in that game.
I know.
12.
And some of those were big passes, to move the chains. But it was our running game that won the day. It's sweet looking back on it. Those guys, they had great careers at BYU, but that was a banner day for them. They rose up and made plays when we needed it most.
What's it like? What's the feeling like, not just beating Utah, but beating Utah in Salt Lake City?
It's the best rivalry ever. It's over 100 years. We're so close. There's so many relationships back and forth that you are aware of. My brother played at the University of Utah. That is not – that's kind of typical of that rivalry. You got family members on both sides, and the game means everything. It's fun to play. It's even better to win. And when you win in convincing fashion, that was a good one. It was an exclamation point on that season.
So at this point, you're now 12-1. You're ranked 6th in the country, and you are alone at the top of the conference. You guys now head to Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. Here we go, and you have just an unbelievable, crazy game against the Cowboys in that championship game. Wyoming, I think, is 10-1.
They're 10-1. They're rolling.
Yeah, so how much did you guys – this may be an understatement – how much was riding on this game specifically?
This game we knew it was everything. We knew that the respect we were fighting for nationally, we had to win this game. We thought if we didn't win this game, there's a chance they freeze us out of a bowl game like they did Wyoming. It was a crime, but that's the way it turned out. And the biggest part of this game for us was Itula-Mili. We go into the game, we're doing well. It's a highly competitive game. Itula blows out his knee on a wicked hit in the second quarter of that game. None of us wanted to play the rest of the game. We went into halftime and we surrounded Itula and his family, who, he was going to be a first-round draft pick. We were all crying. We knew how wicked the injury was to his knee. It was like a funeral at halftime.
How do you muster then the energy when you're dealing with something that is that much of a kick to the gut?
We didn't want to go back and play. I wanted to get on the bus and go home. It just made me sick. I was bummed. I was so hurt for him. And as it turned out, we started the second half, so we were not there. Our spirits were not there. It took a while for us to get fully engaged again and embrace the challenge that we had. And it ended up taking a last-second drive at the game to tie it up.
Yep.
And the presence of mind from Kaipo McGuire to call a timeout with 4 seconds left just to kick a field goal to tie it up. And Ethan Potchman made some unbelievable high-pressure kicks. We get into overtime with them. And overtime, I think the first play of the game, Henry Bloomfield makes a tackle for loss that was like – it was such an impressive beast move on his part, and to us it felt like he won the game.
Yeah,
put them in a spot where, we're going to win the game. Ethan comes in and he kicks a game winner. Again, we have another crowd storming the field moment that year, and we were just going bananas, thinking we were going to the Fiesta Bowl, and we were ranked 5th in the country. We thought we deserved it. We just beat a good Wyoming team, and it was a moment for all of Cougar Nation. That was a sweet moment.
You had mentioned that after the win, you're like, okay, we've got this opportunity, the Fiesta Bowl, and then it doesn't come. How did the team use that? Because this whole season feels like we've got this theme of using X as motivation, in rallying together, and it's us against the world type stuff. It's another example where you guys feel like you deserve something that you weren't given. How did you guys handle that?
Not only were we disappointed, but Lavelle went back to New York for the bowl reveal party where they were going to announce who was going to the Fiesta Bowl. And I think at no point in Lavelle's career was he disrespected more personally than on that trip. And he ended up leaving the studio by himself, catching a cab and leaving. He said it was a rough one. And they put in, I think, Penn State to the Fiesta Bowl, who had 2 losses, and we just thought it was a complete ripoff. We were hot. We were justified in our anger. And that
more losses and ranked lower than you.
Correct. It was brutal. And a giant kick in the teeth, and we used that as motivation to prepare for our battle with Kansas State in the Cotton Bowl. We wanted to prepare well, which we did. We wanted to play well, which we did. And even in that Cotton Bowl coming up, we have serious momentum swings, big plays. And we finished it with an interception by Omar Morgan and a play just before that, a play or two before that by Tim McTire, where Kevin Lockett caught a touchdown pass. And right before his toes touched the ground, Tim McTire pushed him out of bounds. I think Shea had 6 sacks in that game. Defense rose up. Offense made plays. James Dye, as a special teams demon, had a big touchdown in that game. So that game, this Cotton Bowl, overcoming the referees in that game. You need to track down some of those refs and interview them and say, what were you looking at?
It's like, were you watching the same game everybody else was?
And it was a sea of purple.
Yeah.
There were so many more Kansas State fans. Our BYU fans, Cougar Nation, got louder and louder in that stadium the more some of those calls went against us unjustly. And by the end of that game, it was just like so sweet.
So now, what was you mentioned it was a sea of purple. What was the atmosphere like in a big bowl game like that? Just the overall atmosphere.
This is the first time BYU is in a January 1 New Year's Day bowl game. That meant something to all of us. We wanted to win that game for Lavelle. We felt like this is his career. This is the first time he's in a New Year's Day game. We are going to win this game. And that was part of the driver. I remember just in practice that week. Practice was intense. We had a good team. When you have a good team, you have a lot of competition in practice. And there were moments in practice that week that were testy and hot. That helped us get our minds right for the game. And in the game, it was a great battle. They had a very good team, and it took all we had and then some to come out victorious. They had a great defensive back, Chris Canty, that ended up going out of the game with cramps. And Steve threw a touchdown right after that, and that's when he did the lasso. He was like going like that to Canty, and who was on the sideline, and he was just saying, hey, this is the biggest moment of our lives, and we're on the field playing. And Steve got a penalty for that. None of us were sad about it. It was him just saying, hey, we're fighting with everything we got.
I think one of to bring this into the now, I'm pretty sure it was last year where, before the BYU game, where Sark was shown the highlight, and I think he was with Quinn Ewers, and he was asking his quarterback, what if you did that? How would he react if you did that? And I mean, it was hilarious, but it's one of those iconic moments with the lasso, and
right.
I mean, just an unbelievable. You mentioned a couple of the plays, and certainly one bigger than the next. What play when you think of that game, which play stands out to you the most?
I think of starting the year, K.O. Kealalui catching a long touchdown pass to beat Texas A&M. Finishing the year with a long touchdown pass to K.O. Kealalui to seal that victory. And he went absolutely bananas in the end zone. And he was such a fun dude to play with. He was like a little kid out there that just embraced it, loved it. He was a soccer goalie growing up, so he moved as a receiver like a soccer goalie. When he dove for passes or made blocks, it was like a soccer goalie. And then for Omar, who was one of the best defensive backs BYU's ever had, to jump a slant, to pick off the ball inside the 10 to win the game, and then our whole team runs down in front of the missionaries, who there was one or two missions who were there at the game, and to just celebrate in front of the missionaries. It was poetic, it was beautiful, it was redemption, it was victorious, it was everything good for BYU football, for Lavelle Edwards, for the tradition, for all of it. It was sweet.
That was your final game in a BYU uniform on the field. What was that celebration like for you, and how aware of that fact were you at the time?
I think I had Itula's name on a piece of tape, his number 88, written on my helmet, and I took off my helmet and I pointed to that 88. Like the game before, he blew out his knee. He wanted to be – we were a two tight end offense. He wanted to be on that field making plays. It was humbling that he wasn't there. We were playing for so much, and that was one of the cool things about that season, that team. We were always playing for Lavelle. We were playing for Itula in that game, and it was just indicative of the fact that we loved each other. We weren't perfect. We didn't all hang out together, but, man, we loved each other as a team. We had a powerful bond. We earned it on the practice field. We proved it on the game field, and that season was all that wrapped up. And I feel bad to every one of my teammates, because I could go down, I could talk about everyone, their involvement. what they gave to the team, what they gave that no one will ever know, like in practice or off the field, and we just came together as a team, sweet team.
I know you were not a look-at-me guy. What was it like to be back on campus after that win and that season? How great was it to be able to represent BYU?
Just flying back to the airport. The airport was absolutely packed. This is pre-9/11. Anyone could go in the terminal. That terminal was completely packed with Cougar Nation. We got off the plane, and we were just mobbed by so many people that felt just exactly like we did, just this celebration of BYU football. You know, we did it. It was like 84 when we were national champs. And then that was followed up with team celebrations. It was followed up in the Marriott Center. We had a big event where we celebrated the year. Mayor Stewart of Provo gave us the keys of the city. I never used that key for anything yet. It was just one of those sweet victories that just kept going. For us that went into the pros, it really kept going into the pros for us. Like we took that momentum into that rookie year, into everything that we did, and gave us momentum, confidence, sweet memory. And as a senior, you would like to lay down your cleats on the field and say, I gave it everything I had. For us, we felt like that's what we did. We gave it everything we had. We fought, we won, and we were able to walk away with our heads held high. Would
it be safe to say that while you certainly are not going to give away any of the wins, and the way it played out was fantastic, that the lasting memories is the journey with your teammates and all of the relationships? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, look, you could just go down the whole list of dudes, offense, defense, and special teams, and the coaches. The highlight tapes that we had that really bonded us as a team every game, the night before the game, the fun that we had going on the field, taking the field. When you have a great year like that, everything is magnified and highlighted. And for that one year, that's how it is for all of us. It was sweet.
Well, Chad, I think I speak for every BYU fan that may be listening to this. This was an absolute thrill to be able to relive the 96 season. I have vivid memories, as I mentioned, of plays and games, and certainly the outcome and what it means for BYU football. But, you know, basically this program has been built along the way, and the 96 season was one of the big reasons this program is what it is today. So thank you so much for talking about it and reminiscing. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's fun to think about all those guys and those games, those wins in 1996.
1996, and we're going to get to see the drop shadow uniforms this year.
Bring it on. Make some plays.
Let's go. Bring it on. Thanks once again to my guest, Chad Lewis. My name is Jason Shepard. Josh Bergstrom and Ben Hall produced this episode. Deep Blue's senior producer is Cleon Wall. You can download and subscribe to Deep Blue on all podcast platforms or find all episodes on the BYU Radio app. Deep Blue is a production of BYU Radio.